Welcome back. We're learning how to use spreadsheets to analyze physics data, and in part 6 what we'll be doing is learning how to make your spreadsheet look very pretty. And so we'll be talking about how to format your spreadsheet. Alright, so let's format the spreadsheet to make it look a lot better than it does right now. So I'll show you a few basic things that I like to do. Once again, I'm using Microsoft Excel, and I'm using the 2010 version of Microsoft Excel. So if you're using a different version of Microsoft Excel or a different program altogether, you'll have to figure out where all these tools are to do these things to make things look pretty. Alright, so let me start up top here. This is our title, so we can use, in my home menu here I have most of the features that I'll need for any type of formatting that I'd like to do. I'm going to make that bold. Let me crank up the size of it a little bit. The other thing I'd like to do is I'd like to center it on all of my data here. So I'm going to click and hold and highlight all these cells. And there's a merge and center tool right here that I can use that will merge and center that whole title for me. And let me do the same with my name. I'll merge and center on that. I'll keep that in smaller. And let's go ahead. I'm going to highlight this whole row here. I'll make everything in that row bold. And what I'd really like to do is make this into a nice little table here. And it would be nice maybe to center all these values. So I'm going to highlight all these 12 cells, and I'll use a centering tool to center all the values. And then I can use the division tool here to make borders around everything. And that looks pretty nice. What I can also do is maybe make a bold border around the outside of everything. Alright, so now I have a bold box around the whole thing. And maybe I can put the initial conditions, maybe I can use the merge and center tool. And then I can maybe circle that like so. And now I have a nice little table. I'll do the same thing over here. I don't think I need to put the units title here. That's sort of redundant. But I will merge and center the title and circle it with a bold circle. Now, we've got a little issue over here because we've got some overlapping cells. Now, how can we adjust for that? Well, there's a couple things we can do. Let me show you two different ways to handle this. Number one, it'd be nice if I could just spread out my cell a little bit. And I can just, if you'll notice up above, I can grab either on a row or a column, I can actually grab the line in between two cells and slide it to the right or to the left. All right. But down below, I don't really want crazy wide columns down below. I want to keep this sort of nice down below. So I think I'm going to use a different methodology here. I could, for example, make the text smaller and see if I can get it to fit. But there's another thing I could also do. What I could do here, I'm going to select all of these right here. I'm going to right-click on this. I use right-clicks to pull up menus all the time. You ought to do that. Whenever you want to format something, almost always you can do a right click and find some tools to use. And you can see they give you a summary of tools up here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to format the cells, because what I want to do is I want to use, under the alignment, I want to actually wrap my text, and so it'll wrap around in the box. Hit OK. And you notice the frames per tick now wrapped around to the next line, and my frequency wrapped around to the next time. I'll keep these titles left justified, that's fine. And I'll put this in parentheses as F. But I would like to have a table around this. Whoop, and I lost my dark line, as you see over here, so I'm going to put that dark line back in. A thick border box. I'll put a thick border around everything as well. And I would like all my numbers and units maybe to be centered. Okay. Maybe I can stretch this a little bit out to make that fit in there. So now we've got some nice tables of our data here. And maybe even I can bring this whole table over a couple. Oh, it doesn't let me move the merge cell. Here, let me do this. And I'm going to move this over a couple spots. And let me unmerge this cell. And let me move this over. And I'll re-merge it over here. Recircle it. You know, this is sort of annoying because I have these lines over here. A quick way to make this cell look just like the one below it is to use my format painter. So I'm going to click this cell, which has the formatting that I want to show up in all these cells, and I'll just click on it, and then I'll click on the cell to fix it. Alright, so I move that table over a bit. This F here, if I want to actually use the Enter key to make a hard return on this, use the Alt and then hit the Enter key, and that'll bring that down to the next line for you. I'll show you that up here as well. Frames, Alt, Enter per tick. If I wanted to adjust, maybe because I don't like the look of having different height cells here, watch what I can do here. I can highlight all these rows, and if I double click on any one of these, it will automatically adjust the heights to the minimum size fit. But if I click on any one of them and slide it, I can slide it up and down and to get an even fit on all the cells. You can try that. All my titles, I'll put bold and I'll put center. I'll put some more units in here. So I've got meters per second. I've got liters per second squared. Alright, right click, format cells, superscript. Okay. And if I want to repeat these three things, I'll just highlight all three things, and I can cut and paste. I'll just do Control C to cut. And you see it has a dotted line waving around it. And I can move over to where I want to paste it, and it'll paste the left cell first, and do Control V to paste. Or you can use your other traditional cut and paste tools. So there's all my units. And I would like to make this whole thing into a nice table. You might be wondering why I'm skipping the first row. You'll see in a minute. The first column, should I say. And I didn't want this cell to be outlined. That's why I skipped that. So I'll go down and grab this separately and outline it. So that's looking much better. The only thing is I'm bumping up against my cell widths a little bit here. And I also hate the fact that I've got all these crazy length numbers in here. I'd like to sort things out a little bit. So I'm going to take, should we center all of our numbers here? Let's center everything. So I'm going to highlight everything. So I'm going to highlight by click and hold, and then I'll just hit center on everything. It'd be nice to have things, roughly speaking, at 3 significant digits. Unfortunately, Excel isn't using significant digits, so you sort of have to fiddle with it a little bit. But you saw me play with this a little bit before. One way to do this is to take and highlight your set of numbers that you'd like to work on. And we can actually use the keys over here to shift things left and right. And that shifts the decimal place left and right. So, and I mean, roughly speaking, we're in 3 sig digs down below, up above, or 2 there technically, but close enough. These other values, I can use actually the Format Painter to do the rest. I can click on this cell, hit the Format Painter, and then hold and click and highlight all these other cells. And that just was formatted the exact same way. There are some other tools as well. If you have a percentage, I can actually, let's say this was a representative percentage, 99%. I can actually click on the percent tool, and it automatically converts to a percentage for me, and I can adjust the decimal place as well if I wanted to have a different decimal place. Let me back out of that. In addition, we have some other tools up here, like the $sign tool. For example, let's say this represented money here for whatever reason. I can click on the $sign tool, and it puts it as $4.40, and it actually uses parentheses to show that it's negative. For other formatting of cells, what I can do is I can right-click, and I can hit the Format Cells again, and I can format an entire range. Let me just use an entire range here of cells. Let's say I want to take all of these cells. I could format, right-click to hit the Format Cells, and go over to Number, and it will allow me to choose several different pre-formatted methodologies that I'd like to. Like I can choose number with a certain number of decimal places. I can put a comma separator in if your numbers are large numbers. I can show negative numbers in various ways. And I have similar options for currency, accounting numbers, dates, times, percentages, and so on and so forth. I can put stuff in scientific notation, for that matter. And this actually would be one way to get yourself 3 significant digits, is to use scientific notation. But scientific notation isn't the easiest to read, especially if the numbers are small. So there's our nice, neat data table, all neatened up. And all right, one more thing that's going to annoy me if I don't move it is I'm going to move this over one just so I have a little bit of a white space over here. I'm going to have to unmerge this. So I can just click on the merge and it unmerges it. And I'll move this over one. And then I'll remerge it with the entire thing. Merge it center. It messed up my borders, so I'll just refix my borders. Now, one last thing I might want to take a look at is I'm a little bit cramped on some of these columns, but let's just make these columns, let's make them even widths. And if I actually double click on the right cell here, it will automatically size these to fit the largest thing in each cell. Now you got to be careful because the largest thing in all these cells is my top title, and my first column will end up being really wide. Let me just see if that does that. No, actually, because I merged and centered it, it actually ignores it. So when I double clicked on this one cell over onto the right side, it automatically squeezed everything down to a nice compact form. Just be careful. If I did have something over here, I'll just demonstrate. All right, if I were to do this now, you'll see what problem you can run into if you're not careful. It sees this as a really big value in here and it offsets it, so we don't want that. So just be careful about that. But otherwise, this is a nice feature to use, just to slide across all these things at once and double click and it'll automatically downsize. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I could actually highlight all these at once and pick that width for everything and it automatically takes that width for everything. Or I can take that width for everything or that width for everything. Auto size it. Another thing you can do, just in case you need this for other reasons, let's say you have some columns of data or some rows of data that are important for your spreadsheet, but you don't want your user to show those. So let's say for example, I didn't want to show these two middle rows right here. I can actually take these two, I can grab this edge, and I can slide it over past them to the left, and it'll hide them. So I go A, B, C, D, and it skips over to G. That means I have some hidden cells in between that I can't see. If I want to recover those, what I can do is I can highlight the whole thing again, or highlight maybe just two of these. I can double click and it will resize those right back into existence again. Let me delete my quick brown fox comment. But there's a nicely formatted spreadsheet.